Cape Town. There are colleagues who are that side. At the end of the reading of the statement by the Minister, we shall then receive questions here in Pretoria and also in Cape Town. Thank you very much. My name is Ishmael Misi. I will be steering the ship of this briefing. And we are having the leadership of the Department of Transport and the RTMC sitting at the front with the Minister of Transport, Dr. Blade Nzimande, who will read the statement. Just to make sure that all of you are here at the right media briefing, we are here for the mid-term festive season preliminary road safety report. This is what we are here for, colleagues. As you are aware that we are in the middle of the festive season, so we felt prudent that we come and converge here and talk to you so that we can talk to South Africans in general. The Minister of Transport will now be reading the statement. Then we will take questions from yourselves. Thank you very much. Minister, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ishmael. To our Acting Director General, Chris Hlabisa, and who is joining us here, as well as the chairperson, Ubab Majaf of the RTMC, Road Traffic Management Corporation, and the CEO, Advocate Umsivi. Usuya zisakele yansizwe and hambana uzwani omanget spokesperson we RTMC Ubab Uzwane that side, so that you know who is here. Let me greet the members of the media. Thank you very much for coming, and our apologies for starting a bit behind. Largely, it's as a result of the fact that things are happening all the time on the transport front, especially during this time of the year. You would all be aware that we launched the Festive Season Road Safety Awareness Campaign on the N1 between Mokgopong and Kranskop on the 18th of November 2018. We released the statistics from 1st of December because we officially take this day as the beginning of the festive season, ending with the opening of schools on the 9th of January. That's a period we take as the festive season for 2018-19. Giving updates in the middle of the festive season and just ahead of the major year-end holidays also acts as a means to heighten awareness about road safety. That's why we are here today as well. The preliminary report we are releasing today tells a story about road safety in our country, particularly during this period or this season of festivities. I don't know whether I've mentioned that the additional document, have we distributed it or we're going to distribute it immediately after this? Okay. We'll be distributing a document immediately after I finish reading this speech. That has got more detailed statistics for your benefit. It is more befitting and appropriate as we come to the midpoint of the festive season to step back and reflect on what we have achieved so far. We are doing this review in order to prepare ourselves for the challenging period ahead that still lie ahead. We are aware that we are approaching Christmas and New Year's Day's long weekends. We are expecting traffic volumes to increase dramatically from tomorrow, as millions will be traveling home to be with their families or to holiday destinations. for Christmas period festivities. We anticipate that more people will be traveling again on December 28 in preparation for New Year's Day. The last peak travel period will be on the weekend of January 5th and 6th of January 2019, when travelers are expected to return to their homes and places of work for the reopening of industries and schools. It is indeed very sad to note that we have witnessed a period of unparalleled mixture of agony, misery, and pain on our roads from the 1st of December to the 18th this year. And that's the period we are covering today. That's why we are saying it's a mid-festive season update report for the benefit of yourselves and the country. The most prevalent violations on our roads include excessive speeding, reckless and negligent driving, which includes, by the way, drunken driving, and blatant disregard of road signs. Drinking and driving increases, and a combination of fatigue and unroadworthy vehicles become lethal problems, particularly on long-distance travelers. I'll come back to that matter when I end, just to indicate, give a picture, a statistical picture of the causes of the different fatalities or crashes that we have on our roads. Pedestrian movements have also increased on our freeways and our roads in semi-urban, urban, and built-up areas. On the social front, party revelers take their excitement to the streets and other social and entertainment spaces where alcohol abuse becomes a common feature, often resulting in a high number of fatalities and injuries on our roads due to increased instances of drunken driving, as I have said. It is therefore prudent that I use this opportunity to convey our heartfelt condolences to the families who lost loved ones during this period, and our well wishes to all those who are still recuperating in hospitals and at home. I also convey a word of gratitude and appreciation to all law enforcement officers, emergency services personnel, and health professionals who work long hours sacrificing family time to help save lives on South Africa's roads. I also wish to specially recognize and applaud all those road users who obey the rules and regulations on road safety, whether they are drivers, passengers, or pedestrians. My attention, for instance, has today been brought to an important incident where a driver of the Intercape bus services has been suspended and disciplinary charges brought against him because he was overtaking on a barrier line. Very dangerous. But the reason why he has been found and suspended, it's because one of the passengers took out a cell phone and actually videoed this. DVD. Now, that's a good example of what passengers actually should do as well, that if they see something wrong being done by drivers, which is reckless driving, they need to do something or point that out. It's a very, very important matter. I'm very pleased about this incident, that action will be taken as a result of a passenger who used a cell phone to record this transgression on the road. We also wish to urge drivers to desist from alerting other drivers on law enforcement activities by our officers on the roads, including journalists, members of the media. Please, when you see a roadblock, don't then start flickering to the drivers who will be approaching that roadblock, because in essence, you actually a party to possible deaths on the road. Because those traffic officers are there not as an irritant, not for anything else other than to protect your lives on the road. So this thing of solidarity, you flicker to say, hey, we are bad, the things are bad, ahead. It's actually not a helpful thing. We would like to dissuade that. I now also notice, by the way, Chair and CEO of RTMC and acting TG, that there are beginning to be some Facebook pages in different areas that are just focusing on saying, be careful, there's a roadblock, be careful, there's this that happened. And as a result, then we are not able to actually catch the transgressors. People without driver's licenses. It's not that our philosophy relies on surprise. An element of surprise is important, like when we set up a roadblock. Of course, we would like to have visibility and not to hide behind the bushes. But at the same time, it's important to have some element of surprise if we are actually going to be able to catch those who are breaking the rules. So please, this driver solidarity, it's something that we strongly condemn, because we then allow reckless drivers to get away literally with murder. I remind everyone, of course, that our work is not yet done. We still have a massive challenge ahead of us, and the whole country is looking to stem the tide of crashes on the roads and actually contain this carnage. I am aware that some officers have already fallen in the line of duty, your traffic enforcement officers during this period. Our condolences also goes to their families, friends, and colleagues. However, we remain unrelenting and resolute through it all, and we shall prevail, I am confident, in the end. It is also important to note that the festive season program is not implemented in isolation, but is part of an ongoing 365-day road safety program of campaigns that the Department of Transport, the provinces, and its agencies carry out in conjunction with transport stakeholders and the general public throughout the year to ensure that lives are saved. A significant amount of financial resources have been invested to promote awareness and to intensify enforcement and upscale general traffic officer visibility. Awareness campaigns were launched and are still running across different media platforms, including radio, television, newspapers, and other forms of media. I am grateful for the support also that the private sector has given to our campaign. I've been extremely concerned about the high number of public and freight transport vehicles involved in fatal crashes so far in the festive season, 1st to the 18th of December, the period we are looking at. When these vehicles get involved in crashes, the number of fatalities increase phenomenally. A total number of 34 minibus vehicles, for instance, have been involved in fatal collisions since the start of the festive season on the 1st of December, while 44 trucks were involved in deadly collisions. I think it's important to explain this, that our concern also arises out of the fact that you may have fewer road crashes, but if it involves these massive vehicles, the fatalities and injuries are much higher, which is your passenger vehicles, like your minibus, taxis, and buses, as well as trucks, because if a truck gets involved in a crash, it normally affects a whole lot of other vehicles that are on the road, or if it spins out of control and all that. Now, these vehicles I'm talking about were involved in single vehicle overturning, head-on and head-to-rear collisions, which strongly suggests that drivers were unable to control the vehicles due to fatigue, and the vehicles veered onto oncoming traffic, or they were unable to stop the vehicles on time to avoid collisions because of high speed. What stands out quite glaringly is that many vehicles involved in fatal crashes had a high number of occupants and with most crashes occurring between 1900 hours and 2000 hours, and between 2200 hours and 2300 hours. Since the 1st of December, the majority of crashes have happened on Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays, the 3 weekends that we're talking about. Light motor vehicles contributed 47% to the total crashes, followed by light delivery vehicles at a contribution of 21%, and minibus vehicles with a contribution of 7%, and trucks 5%. I call on minibus and truck operators to step up their efforts to reduce the number of crashes involving their vehicles. Since the beginning of our heightened road safety program, we have 44 fatalities from crashes, as I have said, involving 5 minibus, taxis, and trucks. Minibus operators must consider having 2 drivers to relieve each during long-distance journeys to avoid fatigue. This is a small price to pay to avoid the untold misery and pain that families and society suffer from. We are making a plea on this time, but it's something, Chair, that we should actually be looking into whether we should not make this legally compulsory to actually have more than one driver in the minibus taxi industry. We'll engage everyone, of course, but we are pleading at the moment that the minibus taxi industry should consider this. I welcome the strides that have been made by the Road Traffic Management Corporation's National Anti-Corruption Unit and of course the Hawks in their attempts to reduce corruption in the issuing of learner driver's licenses and roadworthy certificates for vehicles. 9 people were arrested when these anti-corruption units raided 2 centers during this period. 5 people were arrested in KwaZulu-Natal when a learner driver center was raided in Underberg on the 7th of December. 4 others were arrested in Davidton, Gauteng, when a private company that produces roadworthy certificates was raided on the 14th of December this year. I must, however, express my disquiet about the recycling of corrupt officers within the traffic law enforcement fraternity. Officers who are fingered in corrupt activities seem to find it easy to change employment between authorities, moving, for instance, from provincial departments to municipalities or vice versa. This practice must stop, as it is eroding public confidence in the traffic law enforcement fraternity and undermines our effort to deal decisively with corruption within the sector. I urge the MECs to follow up on these cases and ensure that departmental steps are taken to hold these officers to account. By the way, I should have apologized for MECs today who are not here because we thought that we must have the full complement of myself and the MECs when we do the final count at the end of the festive season. But they are aware that we are here today giving this mid-festive season report. The permits of private companies implicated in wrongly issuing roadworthy certificates will be withdrawn, and these centers will be prevented from operating. Our traffic law enforcement officers during this period conducted more than 356 roadblocks throughout the country, and they issued 326,642 fines for various traffic offenses. That's a lot. It gives us a taste of the extent of the violation of our rules on the road. Of particular interest is that 10,666 of these fines were for drivers who did not have a driver's license, while 9,620 were for drivers who did not fasten seatbelts. 8,481 for driving unlicensed vehicles, and 811 for driving vehicles with worn tires, and 3,039 for overloading of goods. About 1,402 unroadworthy vehicles were suspended or discontinued, while 1,310 other motor vehicles were impounded. We commend our law enforcement officers on our roads for this. But at the same time, it is indeed disturbing that in a period of 18 days we have got 1,402 unroadworthy vehicles, for instance, that are not supposed to be on the road. To clamp down on drunken driving, speed, and other violations of a similar nature, the officers arrested more than 2,837 motorists, and 1,109 of them, which is 39%, were for drunken driving. A total of 5 drivers were arrested for driving at excessive speeds of between 189 kilometers per hour to well over 200 kilometers per hour. The highest speedster during this period was arrested in the Free State, traveling at 228 kilometers per hour on the N3 near Warden. The highest number of fatalities have been recorded among passengers at 39%, highlighting the importance of using safety belts and the involvement of public transport in the crashes. Pedestrian fatalities were recorded at 33%, while drivers constituted 31%, and the status of 1% was undetermined. Collisions involving jaywalking pedestrians have increased to 44% this year, followed by hit and run, as well as speeds that were too high for circumstances and overtaking in the face of oncoming traffic. Percentages are in there. Hit and run, by the way, we know what we mean. You hit a pedestrian and you run away as a motorist. Now, this is the reason why the human factor, again, has contributed 86.7% to the occurrence of fatal crashes, while road factors, that is, crashes as a result of the conditions of the roads, contributed 8.7%, and vehicle factors 4.6%. What this means is that recklessness and human error continue to be overwhelmingly the most common reason for the crashes that we have on our roads. Now, this preliminary report for the mid-festive season period shows that road fatalities have increased in all provinces, except for Gauteng, that has recorded a 10% decrease. We want to congratulate the MEC in this regard for the sterling work and encouraged him to put in more effort in the coming days to sustain this reduction. This is the MEC in Gauteng. The highest percentage increase was recorded in the Northern Cape, though it's a small province. But if you look at the percentage increase, it was 71%. Followed by Free State with 53% and KwaZulu-Natal with 46%. A total of 767 fatalities have been recorded so far in this festive period, which is a 16% increase on the previous period. In other words, on the same period last year. KwaZulu-Natal with 162 fatalities recorded, the highest number, followed by Gauteng at 125, Limpopo and Eastern Cape had 89 fatalities each, while Mpumalanga had 82, Western Cape 81, Free State 78, Northwest 57, and Northern Cape 24. Though Northern Cape is the least in terms of absolute numbers, but it increases high because if this time last year it was 14 fatalities in the Northern Cape. Now it's almost double. It's 24. It is worth noting that the Northern Cape has the lowest number of fatalities, as I have said. Sorry, I'm repeating. Although its percentage increases the highest. The gender mostly affected in all this is males, with a contribution of 72% to total fatalities. Very disturbingly, the contribution of females has increased, though, from 23 to 27%, while the incident where gender could not be determined as yet have been reduced from 5 to 1%. By the way, amongst other things, this shows the fact that women continue to be safer drivers on our roads. I wish our male population could learn from that. Apart from the fact that you possibly have more males as drivers, but percentage-wise, the share of males is just too high compared to that of females, which underlines the point I'm making. Oh, mama bashayela kangcono kuno baba. Now, law enforcement operations will be stepped up and public safety campaigns upscaled to turn the situation around. Specific interventions going forward will include the following. 1, intensification of law enforcement operations on key traveling dates with a specific focus on speeding, drunken driving, and the wearing of seatbelts. Secondly, the activation of more halfway stations for resting as part of managing fatigue. This must be targeted at long distance. This will be targeted at long distance public transport vehicles. Thirdly, another measure we'll be taking, we are having an urgent meeting with the Department of Justice and the National Prosecution Authority, the National Prosecuting Authority, to ensure that serious cases involving violations of traffic law are prosecuted expeditiously to send a strong message to errant road users that there is a zero tolerance to transgressions of road rules. By the way, we intend tightening the law to reclassify, for example, the offense of drunken driving to a much more serious offense. And also hoping that the law will also will also create conditions that we are tighter on bail for people who have committed such serious offenses. But before we have that legislation, we are urging all law enforcement officers who have got, and judicial officers who have got anything to do with bail, to really not grant bail easily on these serious things, particularly speeding and drunken driving, so that people will have to pay the price right from the word go. I also wish, by the way, at this point, Ishmael, with your permission, to announce that for drunken driving offenses, we are now going to use breathalyzers readings on the spot and arrest transgressors. We're not going to wait for 6 weeks or for 6 months to get the readings, the blood tests and all that. We are now having a machine that will be able to tell us on the spot, and it's being accepted now by the prosecution authorities. that we can use that as evidence immediately so that we are able to deal with the problem right from the word go. Because this gap of waiting for long has been exploited by people, including those who have lots of monies to play around with lawyers, to then be able to dodge and not account for the havoc that they are actually causing on our roads. So you can see now that we are really entering the fourth industrial revolution. Fourthly, the fourth measure is that in the long term we must have an engagement with the Department of Trade and Industry to review the trading hours of taverns and restaurants where liquor is sold. We believe that the 2 a.m. cut-off time encourages binge drinking and increases the risk of road traffic crashes in the early hours of the morning. As a matter of fact, most of pedestrian fatalities and injuries are in areas where there are taverns. So this matter is going to require serious attention if we are to really emerge with a comprehensive program and strategy to deal with this issue of road injuries and fatalities. Fifthly, our cross-border operations will be strengthened to deal with the high incidence of cross-border minibus vehicles. And it's not just minibus, by the way, it's also your big buses that are overloaded with both passengers and goods. I was at the Wanderers on Friday,
Yes.
the Wanderers station in Johannesburg. I saw a couple of vehicles that are from our neighboring countries that are not supposed to be on the roads. I'm not, by the way, saying it's only vehicles from neighboring countries that are not roadworthy. You have South African vehicles that are not roadworthy. I'm raising it in this context because I have said to the RTMC, I get a sense that our law enforcement officers tend to be softer on unroadworthy vehicles from our neighboring countries. They should be as tough as they are on South African vehicles as well. That's the message I've sent, that if we need to pull them off, if we need to pull off a minibus taxi that's going to Zimbabwe or Mozambique or Botswana because it's not roadworthy, let us do so. And not allow a driver to say, but you are delaying me, I've still got 16 hours. Those drivers must know so that in order not to delay, they must actually be driving proper vehicles. And as we normally do, we impound those vehicles and ask the owners from wherever they are to bring safer vehicles. Because those vehicles are not only a danger, by the way, to the passengers that are inside them. They are a danger to all road users. As I conclude, I want to thank all those that have been law-abiding road users, as I've said earlier, who made it to their destinations without any incident. I urge those who are planning to travel in the coming days to emulate the good example set by these patriots and adhere to the rules of the road. Drive within the set speed limit, buckle up, avoid the use of cell phones while driving. Use roadworthy vehicles, remain calm, take regular stops to avoid fatigue, and avoid the use of alcohol while driving. I don't want to be using a lot of anecdotes, but I've got a Facebook friend, one of my Facebook friends. We were texting each other yesterday saying, oh, I listened to your message, by the way, for the road safety. One thing that I actually noticed out of all what you said is that I must not text while driving. I said, oh, that's nice. We're using Messenger, you know. I said, oh, that's very good that you are learning something. He said, in fact, you're absolutely right, because only last week I hit a goat whilst I was texting, being on the wheel, on the steering wheel. So I said, well, if the message is getting across, it's very good. But I'm making this anecdote because the RTMC has told me very disturbing news that So far, not that this is nice news, so far reckless driving and speeding are the two leading causes of road crashes. But now the third one that is also threatening to even move to number one is what we call distracted driving, which in the main means using a cell phone whilst being on the texting in the main, being on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Instagram, whilst you are driving at the same time. Ishmael, I don't want to take much more of your time, but it worries me sometimes being on Facebook as a modern minister. Who's very youthful in the mind, at least. That when I see people going live on Facebook, some of them are driving. I wonder how safe that is. You know? Because it looks like to me it's the same problem. You know? You can see they are steering wheel, people are playing music, and they are possibly concentrating more on whether their life is working, they are connected, rather than connecting on the road. By the way, on the road, to be involved in a crash, you just need 1 to 2 seconds of being distracted. You don't need a long time. To young people in particular, because, by the way, some of our figures, the CEO, show us that the single largest group of casualties and the biggest increase already this December 2018, 1st to the 18th, is South Africans, or it's people between the ages of 25 and 34. So it's young people who are being slaughtered, literally, on our roads, which is our future. So don't text and drive. Achieving the goals that we have set as the Department for the greater safety of all South Africans is a long-term program. It will require greater cooperation between the Department and all its citizens. And dare I emphasize, we also need a strong partnership between ourselves and the media. The media are a very important partner in this exercise. Without your cooperation, we won't be able to reach some of the goals that we want to reach in terms of reducing road crashes, fatalities, and injuries. We have committed ourselves to a reduction of fatalities in our country, and we shall achieve it by enforcing the law rigorously, ensuring that we act without fear or favor, and maintaining constant high levels of visibility on all hazardous routes. We also continue to plead, but also warn that we're going to take action for traffic enforcement officers if they accept bribes. We are dissuading them from that. Where they are caught, we are going to make examples. Because that's blood money, to characterize it correctly. To take a bribe on the road is blood money. I thank the MECs and call on them to take charge of the situation and pull the country back from the edge of an abyss that we are facing. We take solace in our understanding that the rate of increase in fatalities and injuries will be brought down if we all act with urgency from now onwards and tighten the monitoring of our law enforcement operations. We remain steadfast in our commitment to confront lawlessness and rogue behavior on our roads. I wish to remind all our stakeholders and road users that we all shoulder the responsibility to ensure that we are always safe on our roads, as well as always jealously protecting one another. Remember, we are in this together, and together we shall win in this battle. We continue to say, observe the rules of the road and arrive alive. But before I end, let me just go back. Where is this CEO? We'll be distributing this now to you. This slide. Which one is it? Ishmael, you nodded when I said there is a slide I would like to. to come back. Eh? The causes, yes.
The Department of Justice and
Yeah, the slide on the causes
Department
of.
of Health.
Oh yeah, I think it's department slide.
I think it's slide number 4, where you said the Department of Health.
It wasn't this one. We'll look for it. Let me stop for now. I'll come back to this. My apologies.
Okay. Thank you very much, Minister. This brings to an end the statement from the Minister of Transport. We are now distributing the copies of the statistics to the members of the media. It will go with the statement so that we are able to get a clear picture of what the Minister was speaking about. Indeed, Minister, there is a challenge, serious challenge in terms of young people who are dying on our roads, and it tells the story that these are the people who are breadwinners at home, whose families are relying on them for their day-to-day living, and we are losing a number of them on our roads. I hope young people have been listening and will continuously to watch TV and listen to the Minister's message on the concerns raised about the behavior of young people. And through their platforms, they will start to have discussions on the contributions that young people are making on the issues of road safety. I think it's a discourse that we need to have as a country, and solutions must also come from young people themselves for what is happening on our roads. Thank you very much, Minister. We now are going to the second part of the briefing by taking time-specific questions from yourselves as members of the media. Recall that we have colleagues who are in Cape Town as well. So we'll start taking questions here in Pretoria, then we'll cross to Cape Town for other questions outside. I'll take 5 hands first, and then we'll get the Minister and the leadership from the department and the RTMC to respond to your questions. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself and the media house that you represent.
And whether we are a Pirates or a Chiefs fan.
I'll take the first hand there, and you'll become the second, sir.
I'm joking.
Okay, third hand. I see a hand there. Was it the hand? Oh, okay, the third. 3 hands. Okay. Let's start with your name.
From Japan. So, Minister, just in terms of, can you just delve more into social media? In terms of light motor vehicles contributed 47%, do you know maybe how many of those crashes were due to social media? And in terms of Gauteng, what is Gauteng doing better than the other provinces in reducing the number of fatalities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second person?
Sipho Stillman from SABC TV News. Minister, 16% increase compared to the previous period, and opting after the certain seasons, whether it's Easter or festive, we always sit here that the numbers are high, something needs to be done differently. So clearly, the campaign is failing so far, which we went on November 18th. What's the way forward? You've mentioned some ways forward, but there's nothing new from what the campaign initially spoke of when you launched it. So are you out of solutions, or what's happening?
Thank you. President?
From ENCA. I just want to know, South Africa is signatories to the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety 2011-2020. And according to that, we were signing up that would reduce road fatalities by half, by 50% within the next 2 years, which is, of course, in 2020. I just want to know what is the progress in this? Is it currently feasible with the number of deaths that we are seeing on the country's roads with an increase that we've seen from 2010? So, and we're also, where are we getting it wrong? What can we do right? What more can be done, really, so that we do reduce by half by 2020?
Thank you very much. Without any order of preference, I'll start with the Minister, and I think some questions will go to the RTMC.
Is this working now? Oh, okay. Yes, I will leave other questions to my colleagues. That's why they are sitting here in front, by the way. They must know there's no free lunch, so that they can be able to. Let me just start with this question of Stillman, is the campaign failing? Are we out of solutions? No, I don't believe so. I think there are things that we have to repeat every year, every Easter, every festive season, to reinforce messages, because it's clear that there are people who are actually adhering to that. So it helps to continue to reinforce the message. We can't then be discouraged, serious as it is, by the fact that we are not managing to bring this down in particular years. So we can't be discouraged by the need, for instance, law enforcement and so on. But there are new things now that we are doing, and I already in my statement pointed to some of those. Maybe let me just mention them, a few once more. For instance, there is the piece of a bill that is before Parliament now. Is that the National Land Transport Act Amendment Bill, which, amongst other things now, is going to put into law what we've always been talking about, to be tougher on road transgressors, including the demerit system and taking away of people's licenses. That's new now that we are implementing. We've been talking about it. We've seen it in other countries. We've studied that. It does work. If it doesn't work in South Africa, then I don't want to say that on road safety perhaps would be a curse country. We hope that it will work. That is the one thing that we are doing. Also, the other thing that I mentioned is that drunken driving now, we are going to be reclassifying it to be a very serious offense, which also will include more serious sentencing. And for people who have been involved in instances where people have been killed, they must be treated as murderers, not just as violators of the rules of the road. That is what we are doing. The other thing is the one that I mentioned that we need to deal with the Department of Trade and Industry. To look at taverns. We know taverns, are a place where our people enjoy themselves. But there needs to be discipline also, and managing them better. I know some people even say, by the way, taverns are untouchable in our townships. A community gets angry sometimes, goes and burn a library or a school or a clinic, but we have never had any community which got so angry that it burnt a tavern. Usually when people have finished whatever they are doing, they say, Eta, we'll meet at the tavern. We do need discipline around the taverns, because we have already identified that areas around tavern, that's where we are getting most pedestrians being injured or killed, unfortunately. So those are some of the extra measures that we are actually going to be doing. Some provinces, for instance, are doing important things. Like I know the Western Cape, they test every pedestrian fatality. They test blood. Whoever has been hit as a pedestrian and perished on the road, we go and draw blood to test. And they've found more than 60% of the blood has alcohol, or those pedestrians. So we have not given up. We think that we actually do have solutions and a number of other things that I may be able to. Tsecho, am I right? Maybe my colleagues will also come in. We are concerned that we actually may not meet the UN target at this rate. We are not going to meet it. We just need to be honest about that. It does not mean that we are not committed to it, but it underlines the fact that we actually still do need to do more. It's unacceptable what is still happening on our roads. And the fact that it's still the human error, human factor, that still is. We are not saying as government we won't do what we are supposed to do. We are trying our best to do, whether it's on the side of engineering, on roads. For instance, on the N1 between Kranskop and Polokwane, over the next period we'll be spending a couple of billion rands to fix that. Although in the end, by the way, one thing that we don't normally mention, some of these solutions are not going in the end to lead us to where we want to go to until we expand on the provision of passenger rail services in our country, which is also something that is very much and should be very much part of this solution, that we need to invest more on roads. That's the message, by the way, and the lesson we are taking as the Department of Transport to the new administration that's going to be coming in after May, maybe, if the election is in May, I don't know, to say, we've been saying this consistently, let's move both freight and passengers from road to rail, but we are not investing enough in rail. I do not understand why we don't have a train between Johannesburg via Tshwane to Polokwane, possibly even goes to the border with Zimbabwe, that is safe, fast, and so on. So all those things are part of, we can't give up, we have no choice. We cannot give up the fact that our people are dying like flies in some instances on our roads. Let me leave the first questions on the role of social media, because that requires a bit more detail that I might not have here, but RTMC. And what is it that Gauteng is doing better?
Okay, we'll start with the chairperson, then we'll go to the CEO.
Thank you. Perhaps that Sipho Stillman, whether or not the campaign is failing, only you can be in a better position to assist us with a conclusion. But I will say the following to you. The countries that are doing relatively better than us have the kind of legislation that we do not have. It's a fact. Secondly, their vehicle population is not as high as we have. And all I need to do is to direct your attention to slide number 3. That will give you an indication of the number of driving licenses issued per province. The subsequent slide will also show you the increase per province. And most importantly, it will also tell you the increase in the car population. So that as and when we're comparing statistics, you must do so on a context base. Gauteng is currently the leading in both the number of licenses and vehicular traffic. And I'm not taking the issue. I'm saying sometimes when you compare, we must compare apples with apples. You've got a steady increase in the vehicular traffic as well as the number of licenses. You have the similar increase of people who are driving without valid driver's licenses. But having said that, the immediate intervention that we've been working on for the past 4.5 years is simply this. One, the reclassification. It is almost at an advanced stage. When we went live about this issue, some in the media mocked us and said RTMC is crazy. They think they can take away people's rights. When in actual fact, the point that we were seeking to make is that currently, the ease with which bail is granted when people are arrested for drunk driving is a concern. I can tell you now, Stillman, you can leave this place pissed. You get arrested in a roadblock, 2 hours later you'll be released at the police station on 1,000 rand bail. What we are seeking to advocate for is a situation where when you are arrested, you are presumed innocent, but the manner in which you may be admitted to bail must be in line with those serious offences. For example, you don't just pay 1,000 rand and you are released. You have to appear before a magistrate, follow the normal processes, and if you persuade the court that you should be admitted to bail, then you would be released. That is the message that I was hoping the media would assist us to point. But that legislation is about to come to fruition. The second most important piece of legislation is the demerit system. Compare us with Australia, Sweden, they have the demerit system. After a certain number of offences, you will lose your license. We do not have that in this country. And that is the only way in which you can deal decisively with the human behavior. Thirdly and lastly, everybody knows that if you get arrested at a roadblock, all that happens is that you blow into a breathalyzer, and if it goes beep, 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 it is prima facie proof that you may be drunk, but not conclusive. Then you get taken to a hospital where your blood must be drawn within 2 hours. Sometimes officers don't make the 2-hour period, in which case that blood falls by the wayside. Or even once the blood is drawn within the 2-hour period, sometimes you wait much longer for the blood results to come out, and therefore the prosecution, which leads to consequence management, fails. What has now been achieved 2 days ago, literally, is the EBAT system, which basically means the device into which you will blow at a roadblock now has acceptable evidential value. So it means you no longer have to be reliant on the 6-month period waiting for the blood results that may or may not come out. Now, all of those efforts cumulatively will yield results. You won't see the results here and now today, but I think it is a process. Yes, every increase is an increase too many, but at the end of the day, the responsibility rests on all of our shoulders. And we need to get to a point where in our country we issue graduated driving license system. Because at the moment, you've never touched a car in your life. You go for 3-4 lessons. During perfect road conditions, you get issued a driver's license. And then what happens? Come January 8, you're on the N3 to Devon. In other countries that you are comparing us against, you will not even see a turnpike or a freeway until you have proven yourself that you are an experienced driver over a period of time. So I think sometimes when you do this comparison, we need to be informed by that. But having said that, we acknowledge that it is still a challenge, but the responsibility rests in every single one of us. It is a joint responsibility.
Thank you, Chair. CEO.
Thank you. Minister Chair, in the media, the question asked by Mr. Stillman is to the effect that, are we failing?
And what is Gauteng doing?
And what is Gauteng doing better than any other province to realize the reduction of the 10%? It might be proper that we indicate that in relation also to the UN decade of action. In 2010, when South Africa signed that declaration, the vehicle population in South Africa was 8 million. Today, the vehicle population is 12 million. It has increased. At the time when we signed the declaration, the baseline was 13,802. Last year, statistics gave us 14,050 of the fatalities. I'm trying to give a correlation so that when we begin to come to a conclusion, whether we're failing or not, those variables will have been taken into account. Minister has covered the issues. Yes, there's an increase of 16% with 111 fatalities. But when you take the factors into consideration, the education has made significantly well. Comparatively speaking, from last year, we're at 88% in terms of the human contributory factors. We're sitting at 86%, so there's a reduction. However, the absolute numbers have increased. If you also look in terms of the issues, jaywalking has increased to 44% as opposed to 26% last year. As the minister was saying that liquor, consumption of liquor plays an important role. If you also look in terms of hit and run, Last year we're sitting at 14%. This year we're sitting at 17%. So those two on their own, take the tire best. The tire best last year we're sitting at 40%. This year we're sitting at 70%, which is an issue of the roadworthiness of the vehicles, both human and the roadworthiness. What is Gauteng doing better than all other provinces? Gauteng has begun to implement the 24/7, particularly over weekends, these days when accidents are happening, Saturday, Sunday, and Friday. They have a 24/7 shift that is dealing with these issues. But closer home, what Gauteng has also done, they have now directed all their resources to urban areas, particularly the townships, as well as areas where liquor has been consumed. And that number begins to show you in terms of the number of arrests of drunken driving that has been made by Gauteng. Gauteng is leading. So it begins to show that when we go to the areas where people are having these festivities, we begin to prevent a number of fatalities. Did the social media contribute? Yes. The participation, you'll recall that when we launched the...
No, it's off now, eh?
Is it? Oh, thank you. The social media has played a very critical role in relation to the reduction in these instances in terms of the human conduct. Last week when we launched the aware.org campaign, the satisfaction that we got from the public in terms of participation of the media, creating the awareness, has been fascinating, particularly on the drunk driving. 2, whether any accident that we have was as a result of the contribution by social media where people were texting or not texting. Those figures we don't have, but what we have is the fact that all the crashes that we have investigated, there was a prior contravention of a road traffic offense prior to the accident. Either a person has been tired, either the person has been overtaken on the barrier line, either the person has been driving at a very high speed, either the vehicle was overloaded. And I think in the social media you have seen some vehicles where it's supposed to load 24 people, it had 44 people in it. Some of them are supposed to load 14 passengers, but they have 28 passengers in the vehicle. Those have been the major contributory factors.
I think Swahili raises a very peculiar point as to how can we determine how to appropriate the actual percentages of those people. It is a question that I pose to our accident reconstruction experts. What they indicated is that if there were to be collaboration with your networks, and depending on whether or not the law may permit, they would be able to determine what happened a few seconds prior to the accident, but they would have to have access to the database of that particular driver, which currently is not necessarily allowed. So we are not able to give empirical data, but they do have the capacity to test that and determine that. Insurance companies are already doing that because they get you to consent to making that information available. So they'll be able to check on your line what was the activity immediately prior to the accident. So we don't have that kind of empirical data as RTMC that we can share with you, but it is something that with the collaboration of various parties can be achieved. But I do not see how the affected transgressors would give us consent to go into their personal lives. But we are therefore not able to give you that data untested as it is. But there seems to be a movement in that direction, but we don't have it at the moment.
Ishmael, can I just... Oh, okay. The acting DG wants to say something. I just wanted to add a small thing, but you go ahead first.
I think one more thing that we need to clarify with Steelman from SABC News is that it's not a failed effort by the Department of Transport and Government. I think we need to go back and learn from what Sydney, Australia did in 1970 during the first Olympics they had. They were in the same situation like us here in South Africa. And it's only in 2012 when they turned the corner, where they had at least 600 people who were getting killed a year. It was a disaster for them. But Majak has covered quite a lot. I want you to say to yourself is that it took them 40 years before they could realize the difference, because road safety is not an event. It's a process which is, there's a lot of engagement between all the stakeholders. So our programs are working, and the minister has covered that very well, and the chief and the CEO of RTMC as well as Majak, the chairperson. So we want to make sure that you are partners of us in making sure that our programs are working, and you must become our partners in dealing with these kind of issues. So it's not a matter of saying your programs are not working as well. So what are we doing as a nation to deal with the issues of road crashes in our country? I think that is what I want us to say.
Is it working?
Yes, Minister.
I just thought maybe I need to add and perhaps just help to clarify what the CEO was saying about Gauteng, and maybe add a point or two. The 24/7 that he's talking about is visibility of traffic officials on the roads on a 24-hour basis. That is one of the things we've identified, which Gauteng is doing better now as a major contributory factor to reduction of road crashes, if you have got police, particular traffic police visibility. And we are looking at this now nationally. That's why I thought that maybe RTMC is going to boast that we've this year recruited the highest number of trainees to be traffic officers than in the history of our country. It's 300.
Yes.
New recruits in 1 year by RTMC. And next year we are targeting 700 additional new recruits, to be traffic police, because we feel that at least which we are doing now is to identify hazardous roads, but even there we still do not have enough numbers to do 24-hour presence and visibility. Our statistics show that where we do that, we succeed. Gauteng is proof of that. That's why then we are actually increasing as one of the other measures that we should say. Stearman, we are not singling you out to say we are not giving up, and what are some of the things? Because the question you were asking is a valid question, by the way. We are not saying it wasn't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we cross over to Cape Town? Cape Town? Don't have any questions in Cape Town?
Oh, really? Cape Town, all their transport problems and things are solved.
All right. Can we come back to Gauteng, Victoria? There's a hand here. Second hand. This is the last round, colleagues. If you have any question to ask, please do so now. Is there any other hand? The third hand here. Okay. Let's start with Minister. Thank you.
Minister, it's Laenzo from Power FM. Mine is on that billion or odd numbers that you just mentioned along the N1 Transkop Mutimole route. I think last weekend I was checking the numbers and I saw that there were about 18 people in a space of 24 hours that were killed. And when I look at the fatalities in Limpopo, and you've got 89 of those, if I calculate in 24 hours, 20% of those happened in a small stretch of road. What are the two things that you've picked up as contributory factors just within that 5 to 10 kilometer radius on the accidents that we've been experiencing there? And that number, that figure, what is it going to do? What are you going to do there to reduce those fatalities? You just touched on it a little bit a couple of billions that you say you'll be spending there? Thank you.
Okay. Second hand.
My name is Lazarus Twale from Critical Media. My question goes to RTMC. The CEO just mentioned that there is an increased number of tire bursts from 40 to 70%. And on social media, there's a message circulating that there are criminals who throw spikes or razor on the roads to cause accident or to rob people while trying to change tires. When you do your investigation, did you notice any spikes being thrown on the road? And my second question goes to also on the tire burst. You normally see these taxis pulling the trailers, overloaded trailers, and you see police stopping them, but 5 minutes they release that taxi, it continues with its journey. So what do you do with those? Why don't you impound that trailer or that taxi? Because normally when you're driving on N1, you see those trailers parking outside on the road. It shows you that it was overloaded. Thank you.
Thank you. The final one. Sister? Oh. It was you. All right.
I'm Chekwane Tlati from Open News. My question is from the RTMC. They spoke about a technical strategy which is checking on your phone as to whether what happened before a few minutes before the accident, which in my opinion I think as much as it's important, but it's actionable, because you can only find out about what happened. Maybe perhaps those people will be dead or something else. So I think maybe we should focus more on what can be done before the accident, what can prevent.
Okay. This brings us to the end of the question session. We'll have the answers and we'll then go to the conclusion of our briefing. Thank you. I'll start with the Minister and we'll go to the RTMC.
Okay. Let me just briefly allow me, Ishmael, to be out of order. Start with Facebook now. I just took 5 seconds. You know, someone, they've taken this part that the Minister of Transport uthi kunama roadblock masihlangana nawo singabatshela abantu. It's a very interesting but disturbing responses that I hear. Someone is saying, Ulutho Pasia, we love our brothers and sisters, so sicela umchazele Minister. In other words, I can't win. Lo munye uthi ngeke singatshelana. Kusho sinenhlanhla ntuli. Ngiyaba expose manje, I'm naming and shaming them on television. Omunye uthi, hey, I was so embarrassed when the Minister said that because I do it every time, you know, flickering of lights and informing that. But this is both good, they are responding to the message as we are getting it, but also it's of concern if some are like defiant, which is the example we are trying to plead. Don't be defiant because it's about your life. Because you may be rescuing someone who not far from there is going to actually be doing something, which may even involve your relative, by the way. That is wrong. I was just exploiting the fact that, and proving to everyone that I'm on social media. I've said I'm a modern minister, so you can, you can see that. I mean, the interventions in Limpopo, we've announced some, but we'll be announcing some of them in more detail, acting DG, as we get closer to rolling them out. You know, all what we are saying is that. Personally, I must say, when I was there in that part of Kranskop, around Kranskop on N1, I was really very concerned, you know, about the fact that here is this road which is a killer, just taking our people's lives so cheaply and easily. We can't simply say as government, because more than 80% of the causes of road crashes is human error, therefore we're going to sit back. So where we think that there are engineering solutions, we will seek to provide that as government where we can. We've asked Sandral, for instance, to look into that stretch from an engineering perspective. Sooner we are able to know, we'll be able to announce it. They may come back and say, actually, engineering-wise, there's hardly any problem. The problem is maybe other factors. We don't know. Or they may say, this is what we can actually be able to do. By the way, there are a number of areas in the country where we are looking at the engineering side of things. The one is Fundrinen, for instance. It worries us, that stretch. Those who know the N3 from here to Durban. The Fundrinen stretch is one of them. There are other parts of the country where we are actually looking into that. I am then not going to take over the questions meant for the RTMC. Acting teacher, you might want to add on Limpopo. I've learned now as a minister, don't take over problems that you can nicely hand over to officials. We all work together. Thank you.
Okay. DG?
No.
You can deal with the Limpopo part. Ministers.
Oh, okay. I think Minister has covered it very well, and I want to believe that Minister has covered it very well. Just that Minister has commissioned Sandra to do a report on the stretch of the road, has been mentioned by the media, and it's more on engineering safety of the road pavement itself, which includes, among other things, the separation of the two carriageways, using the JZ barrier and stuff like that. But that report is being concluded in terms of the engineering designs, in terms of the order of that road, which is the N1. So that is far from
Clary from Open News, let me just correct. Perhaps I was inelegant in my explanation. The issue about us being able to test what could have happened a few seconds before the accident was a modest attempt to respond to a question well put by Usbahle. She wanted to find out if we have empirical data that informs us how many people, or what is the percentage that is a direct consequence of being on the social media. And I explained that we do not have that empirical data, and I sought to explain why it is that we do not have it. It is not something that we are doing as an intervention, because it is something that happens after the fact. What we are doing proactively is to keep on punting the education side of the message to say, please do not text and drive. But if everything else was equal and we had access to this information, we would be able to share with you that empirical data. I was merely talking to our capacity to determine that if we were called upon to do so, just as the insurance companies are doing. So we're not reactive in that response. It was a direct answer to a direct, and I thought, well put question. Perhaps as a parting shot, if the media would want, at some point we need to arrange perhaps a small workshop with our reconstruction experts, just so you get to see when they say it takes 2 seconds of distraction, how do they come to that timing, because they are able to reconstruct the whole accident. And that type of information will be useful to be shared with the media, because then you can see how easy it is to get involved in an accident and some of the horrific discoveries that are shared. 2 years ago, we attempted, and we were shot down by the SABC, we attempted to shock the system and show you graphic details of an accident as it was about to happen, as it was unfolding, just to shock the system. And we were told that there may be issues of sensitivity and all manner of things. But in other countries, they do show that information to say, just picking up the phone, this is what it could mean. But in our context, we are constrained to do that. And it was an attempt to try different ways of getting the message across.
Thank you, CEO.
Thank you. The issue that relates to N1, particularly the spikes and the razors on the road, which has been an allegation that has been in the media, We have worked with SABC to uncover the veracity of that situation, and I'm not going to give the outcome there too. However, the issue in Modimolle, we have come to understand two factors that caused those major accidents was speed and worn out tires. Remember, one of them was in relation to a freight vehicle and the minibus. Tires were smooth. It couldn't have been any spikes or razors, but the fact of the matter was the owner of the vehicle used second-hand tires. That's one of the issues that we should be addressing in South Africa, because there are these second-hand tires that are sold at the corners of the townships, and people use those tires. And the problem with the Limpopo, the heat also made those tires not to be consistent, because they are not SABS tested tires that are supposed to be on the road. And that's what begins to give these matters. As to the outcome of the investigation between ourselves and SABC in relation to the stress in Modimolle, I would be unable to give you the outcome because we're still operating with that area. I will be blowing the cover if I do give this, and you'll pardon us for not giving you the details there too. And I think the rest have been covered. But you ask about the trailers that you normally see on the road. Subsequently, 5 minutes later, you then see them have been released. Yes, Minister touched on that. One of the issues were also part of the corruption issues on some of our traffic officers. We have now begun to intensify the law. In terms of the law, if the trailer is overloaded by 95%, it's an immediate arrest and the impoundment of the vehicles. You will have seen from yesterday, most of those trailers have been impounded and drivers have been arrested. So we are now monitoring. Maybe I should not give more information on these issues because we are on TV. We will be alerting the would-be victims that we want to deal with them. But we are monitoring that process in all the major roads. I will not specify where.
Thank you very much, CEO. Let me give the Minister the last part.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. No, once more, thank you very much for being here and working with us as members of the media. And I think I just want to end by wishing, firstly, all of you, as members of the media, a Merry Christmas to those who are Christians and who observe Christmas, and a Happy New Year to everyone, and to all South Africans out there. And just to underline our message, please observe the rules of the road. Please cooperate with our traffic law enforcement officers. Don't treat them as an irritant. They are there for your safety as well, because we want everyone to arrive alive and enjoy the festive season. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister and the panel, ladies and gentlemen of the media, colleagues. That's it. This brings an end to our media briefing for today. We are still going to engage with ourselves going forward regarding what is happening on our roads. Myself and my colleague, Mr. Simon Zwane, will be there to facilitate going forward. Thank you very much for coming, including colleagues in Cape Town. Thank you very much. We've got a slide, a snack just on the foyer. Please join us before you leave. Thank you very much.
No?
Yes.
No?
I was at the Free State, and then I moved our Joburg office, and now since February I've been here.
I'm sure you got married subsequently.
Oh, is it?
We are trying to say this guy. Yes. Basuke befuna exclusive.
Oh, eh. Office.